Yep.
Oh, good morning. Hello, Facebook land, and welcome to Virtual Coffee. It's Cheryl from the Growth Hub, and today I have Phil Preston with me. How are you, Phil?
Hi, Cheryl. I'm great. Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. I mean, for those of you who don't know, Phil, I mean, the topic that we're talking about with Phil, I met Phil, I think probably last year. I believe we were in lockdown.
Yes.
And you were running a marathon up and down your street.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was back in April last year.
Yeah, that's right. Right in the middle of lockdown. But the thing that really drew me to have a chat with you, Phil, was all about this idea of purpose-driven businesses. And today's topic is about using purpose to grow your bottom line. Which I mean, personally, for me going into business, it is about how I can have some level of social impact or purpose behind my, why we do things.
Yes.
And so talk to me, purpose 101 and business. Talk to us generally about what that all means for those of us out there in Facebook land that are going, what do you mean by purpose? What purpose are you talking about?
Well, there's so many different aspects. Let me just start off with a couple and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the first one is, particularly in a small business environment, but also in a large business environment, we think of what we do as an activity. For example, a cafe, we're selling coffee and cakes. And we're generally not framing that in terms of the benefit to society. Now, that might sound a little bit airy-fairy and fluffy and not meaningful to people. However, once your business is viable, I think having an eye on that end game is what's going to really give you an edge and help you succeed in the long run and perform. So, for example, just in a cafe context, and I'm just winging this, it's saying, well, maybe you've noticed your cafe is a really important meeting point for people in your area. Maybe quite a few of those people live alone and they're isolated. This is a real congregation and connection point for them. So what are the strategies your business could do to increase that connectivity? And there might be more to it than just selling coffee and cakes, or there might be ways of attracting more people to buy more coffee and cakes based off that purpose. So you could reframe your purpose, for example, as increasing the connections in our neighborhood through I guess a food or something experience. So the whole purpose 101 is trying to shift a mindset away from just thinking about the activity or a financial outcome, which would be make lots of money, and seeing it as what's the benefit to society that we're creating here.
And how, and I was going to say how important, but how have you seen that affect someone's bottom line positively from going, I started off this business not really having a level of purpose, but then finding what my purpose was and having some sort of, impact in some way. And it actually positively, we talked about this before, your P&L.
Yeah, well, again, I'll frame it in terms of small business because we're both small business owners and we deal with a lot of small businesses. I think your life is your business quite often in this regard. So the first point to make is if you can make a difference through your work and do it on a bigger scale than what you might be able to ordinarily do in your spare time, I think that's a huge win because not only are you benefiting your business, you're also getting a much greater sense of satisfaction yourself. And normally the assets in your business are quite often larger than what you have sort of in your lying around your house or what you have in your personal life. So that's number one. Number two, some examples are one I often talk about just because I think it helps people understand what this looks like really well is in the real estate sector where real estate agents in an area, and they were competing real estate agents, joined into an initiative to help reduce unnecessary tenancy evictions. So what they were finding was, so from a social perspective, some people were being evicted because they had they lost their job or they had health issues or there's domestic violence and other social problems going on in their life. but with a bit of support, they could actually retain those tenancies, and therefore, from the real estate agent's business as well, if they could avoid those tenancy losses, then that was positive in terms of saving them money, saving them time, and having happier landlords or customers out the other end. So finding those connections between profit and purpose is a bit of an innovation exercise. So it's not as easy just to go out and say, I'm going to support this charity, and you make a random choice. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But what we're saying here is there's options in your everyday business that can also yield some really powerful results.
So let me understand, Phil, like, and I'll talk, say, reference to our business, right?
Mm.
And from the very beginning, for me, it's been about being able to impact business owners, so making a difference in their lives, freeing up their time. So we're an outsourcing agency, so we have virtual assistants that help businesses. And then, but on the flip side, it's also about empowering our talent that's across the world. A
Mm.
lot of them are in the Philippines, a lot of them are in sort of more developing countries, and it's about providing good work opportunities for them as well. So what I mean, and whether it's our business or whatever, what are some tips to reflect on or provide some level of structure as to how to set this all up, if you
Yeah,
know what I mean?
you're asking the hard questions.
I am.
That's
That's what
great.
you're here for.
I want to give the hard question. So, firstly, as a service provider, the game is slightly different. So, you're a service provider, I'm a service provider. If we look at lawyers, accountants, all service providers, you're often, it's not always the main game, but you're supporting other businesses typically as your main game. So, for example, in your context, you could be, what is the benefit of you doing what you're doing? Well, I'd say it's flowing through to the businesses you support and helping them potentially to make a bigger impact than what they normally would. So you could see it as a flow through thing. Now, in terms of how you run your business, yes, there's an issue about the people you're supporting in other areas or other countries or other regions to do that. And there would be a certain level of social impact we could potentially attach to that. Once we get into social impact measurement, things get a little bit tricky as well, because you've got lots of things to weigh up. You have pluses and minuses, and you've got to actually understand, where are the big pluses and the big minuses, and really focus on them and say, I can see this as having a benefit in this area. That's what I want to prioritize. So I think that's a very short overview answer to your challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what are the things and you mentioned, because you've recently put together a webinar about, the seven purpose statement mistakes and how to fix them. So and you've got you talk about this checklist to keep you on track.
Yeah.
What's that checklist, and how do we implement it into our businesses? If we're wanting to make a bit more impact, we want to drive some purpose in our businesses.
Yes.
How do we continually ensure that that's what we're doing?
Yeah. So purpose might not be fixed forever, but it's something in your business that should be fairly stable and durable, because it becomes your guiding light. And I guess just to give you some examples of mistakes people make when they're sort of forming their purpose, I've already covered the one about they see their business as an activity and not an outcome. So making cars is different from providing sustainable transport solutions, for example. Sometimes there's a bit of marketing sizzle over substance. If you take a look at a company like Coca-Cola, we all, I think, celebrate it as a brand, or it has a lot of brand value, but their purpose statement is to refresh the world and make a difference. Now, I don't know that that's, when I pick up a can of sugary water, I struggle with that. And I think, there's industries, tobacco industry, alcohol, and there's some that will be problematic, right? But, you've got to see beyond, what is the benefit? And if there's no benefit, you really got to question why you're in business or what direction your business is going in. And for example, Coca-Cola is a company that has diversified into bottled water and a whole range of other things that are, I guess, potentially less harmful, and into products that are lower sugar and so on. There's some purpose statements are really vague. Some pretty much say we want to make the world a better place. Now, you could cut and paste that onto any consumer brand, and it would be the aspiration they all have, but you've got to be a bit more focused than that. And some are just uninspiring. So the primary audience for your purpose statement as a business should be your staff. It's also your customers, and it's also other people, but it's primarily your staff, because a lot of studies show that when people are really mobilized around a social goal or a noble cause, they will bring a lot more of themselves to that task, and they'll be much more innovative and productive as a result. And I've actually got a really neat example of that. There was a fundraising team in one of the universities in the US, the University of Michigan, and they were performing below par. Their job is to ring up alumni of the university and try and get donations out of them to fund scholarships and other things. And they were performing very poorly by industry benchmarks. So the manager of the centre brought in a scholarship holder who just talked to the staff for 5 minutes and said, this is what I've got out of the scholarship. It's changed my life, blah, blah, blah. And just by doing that on rotation, I think every couple of weeks, bringing in a scholarship holder made the staff understand, this is the purpose. This is why we're doing this. And I think their performance increased, went up by about 175% in terms of the results they were getting.
Yeah.
So I think that's how powerful purpose can be when it's done well. So let me finish off your question by giving an overview of the checklist. For me, it's about, and I've analysed the top 50 company statements in Australia to sort of derive what's important. Number one, it should be outcome oriented. So what's the benefit to society you're producing? Number two, have the right scope. So not too narrow, but not too broad. Number three, it should be easily communicated. There's a really wonderful statement by Cochlear, the bionic ear maker, who says, our purpose is to help people hear and be heard. That's really nice and succinct. It doesn't have to be super succinct, but you don't want it to be a paragraph of 30 or 50 words either. It should be inspiring for employees, and I'd say that Cochlear statement is, and it should be enduring. It should last more than your current 3-year plan or your 3-year strategy. It should be 5-10 years, hopefully more. Yeah, so that's what I'm looking at when I'm analysing statements and helping people review theirs. And in the corporate world, they go through big processes to do these reviews. In businesses, sometimes it's really just a matter of having a 60 or 90-minute session just to say, this is what you need to be thinking about, and then teasing out the ideas. And I find the 80-20 rule is you can get a fair way in a short space of time.
I mean, we went through, and at the start of every year, we sort of reflect on what is our vision, our mission, and our goals. And I have to say that sort of mission purpose statement was a tricky one, because at the end of the day, everyone wants to make, maybe not everyone, but we want to make a difference to people across the world. So it was like businesses and people, and it came down to that, what you see there, powering businesses and empowering people. And it may not necessarily be, I don't know if it's the perfect one, but that's what for us, that it was about the empowering. It was and as allowing and enabling people, whether it's the businesses or a talent that work with us, the champions that work with us, enabling them to have that level of freedom in whatever it is that they're doing. And so it was a difficult process. I have to say, it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be, because I thought, yeah, write what I think in my mind. But I said it needed to really have to be inspiring in some way, and also really speak to the heart of what it is that we're about.
Yes.
So yeah, that we had a look at those really those good sort of examples, like you said, and just went, okay, what is it? It's just really like a short sentence, really succinct about what it is you're trying to achieve.
And having a statement alone, a great statement, does not mean you're delivering.
That's right. Yeah.
You've got to be setting up some measurements or indicators to tell you whether you're doing that or not. And for larger organisations, clearly that's a bigger process. For smaller organisations, not so much. And I think another challenge I see in the industry, or in industry in general, is that in some circles, you do get into some tricky areas and you need experts with social measurement skills to be able to do this. And then it starts, you're talking about 10, 20, $50,000 sometimes. So you can't always, no one has, well, not everyone has the budget to do that sort of thing. So you've got to be smart in the way you come up with measurements and sometimes proxy indicators as well.
Yeah.
But I get what you mean. And I think, maybe another opportunity for your business is to help some of your clients understand where the opportunities lie for them. Because
that's
you'll have a different perspective of their business to what they have, and you probably have some really valuable insights to bring.
Yeah, and so how? I'm just thinking, without utilizing it generally for marketing, because people can also say we're all sorts of things just to make it sound sort of fluffy and pretty.
Yeah.
Where I mean, give examples of where you think they've done it really well. Say, for example, what's that shoe company? Is it Tom's? If you buy one shoe, they donate a pair of shoes to someone in need. So I really like those. But my question then comes down, as a business, like how do we then balance that whole? It comes down to the question about the profitability as well.
If you permit me to give an example or a three-stage way of thinking about this, there's a whole range of social challenges out there. There's no end of social or environmental challenges that we could take on. However, when you break it down from your business's perspective or anyone's business perspective, a lot of those social challenges won't be directly connected or influencing your business. So, for example, if you or I support a kids' cancer foundation, that's a great thing to do, but it actually doesn't connect to my business. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but that's where it's really a discretionary act of support, and that's typically what we call philanthropy, of making that contribution. And there's lots of charities and not-for-profits that need that support. But when we paint a bigger picture, there's a second level of issues, which is where your business touches on society, and that's where you're more concerned about brand and reputation risk. So in the case of, let me think about, there's a well-known brand of nappies. I don't know if you might be thinking of the same one as me, that sponsors children's hospital foundations, for example, because there's a connection between their customer and the cause, and that helps them, improve or maintain their brand and reputation. They have to do a certain amount of activities there. Really, the marketplace, when their customers will demand it. They'll also be doing things like responsible business initiatives. They'll have an Indigenous Reconciliation Action Plan in their organisation and so on. Now, these are all things that they have to do as a business, I'd argue. However, they don't help the business really grow their bottom line. It's sort of maintaining their license to operate. So that's level 2. And level 3, and sorry, the limitation with that level 2 is, although it sounds great and businesses getting involved in those issues, globally, companies spend less than 0.1% of their revenues on those types of activities. That was relatively small. Now, where I love getting to is level 3, where you can potentially harness 100% of a company's revenue-making activities in sort of finding that overlap between profit and purpose. And to, I guess, outline, I have a bit of family history because I grew up in Hobart, Tasmania, of all places. And one of my great-grandfathers sailed out from England in exactly 100 years ago, in 1921, to work at the Cadbury factory in Hobart. But if you go back into the history of the company, when the sons of the founder, so George Cadbury and Richard Cadbury were the sons of the founder, they took that business on in the 1860s. Then when their business grew, they had their big breakthrough with the milk chocolate bar. Their business grew and they moved to the outskirts of Birmingham in England to build a new factory. And then George Cadbury thought it'd be a good idea to buy up land around the outside of the factory and build really good accommodation for their workers. And they let these cottages out at very affordable rates to their workers. And the workers had a plot to grow vegetables, and they had facilities like a pool and all sorts of stuff around them. And while some people might have seen that as philanthropic, George Cadbury actually said, look, no, I can see that if they have these good facilities and services and accommodation, they'll be happier and healthier and more innovative and productive as a workforce. In other words, he was seeing a connection between supporting employees and the bottom line of his business. Now, is this just a back to the future moment? Well, it's not, because there are some leading companies doing this today, this type of thinking. But what we're not good at is sort of recognizing and replicating that way of thinking. The challenge is for a lot of businesses to get out of their immediate, I guess, supply chain, because that's the world they operate in, their staff and their suppliers and their supply chain. But there's a whole world outside of that, which is, customers, communities, regulators, government, investors, and so on, that they don't think about so much. And they're not so much thinking about what are those investments we can make that will actually deliver an attractive return to us and society at the same time.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, as a small business, like you said, if you're a large corporate and you've got good amount of revenue and cash flow and things like that, I'd say from a lot of small businesses, they're going, okay, I can see how you can have that sort of investment.
Yeah.
So do you feel, are you helping small businesses to be able to identify areas, like, even, because a lot of small business owners just struggle to pay themselves, let alone going, I'm going to be able to give whatever. And it doesn't need, I guess the point is, it doesn't necessarily need to be a monetary thing. What are some good examples of things that small businesses can do without it costing an arm and a leg, but still being able to satisfy that purpose?
If you come back to the real estate agent example I was giving earlier about helping to save tenancies, that came at pretty much zero cost. That was really just reconfiguring the way we do things. But it took a bit of foresight to want to go out and explore that and understand what that was. So yes, you can end up with some big investments in dollar terms if you want to go that route. There'll be a certain set of opportunities out there for you as a business. So firstly, every business is different. No matter how similar they might look on paper, you find every business has different things going on. So just to cut through the noise here and say, how do you go about finding these opportunities? Because they can exist anywhere in your business. The best thing to do is to write down, what are my top 10 business challenges today, or opportunity areas. So come up with your list of 10 challenges or opportunity areas. Then on another list, write down all the social, environmental, and economic challenges you see going on around you in terms of, say, your industry or region that you're in. And then all you do is this is the innovation part and the brainstorming part. You look at those two lists and you start to see some connections between one or two of those things on the opposite sides of the page. And that's where it gets exciting. So the challenge we have here is that it's actually an innovation exercise. And I cannot give you, Cheryl, Leong, a formula that will tell you an exact answer, but I can give you a process. I can help you understand what that process is. And look, I don't understand your business as well as you do, and I probably never will. So I can't come and tell you what the answer is, but I can guide you and other businesses through that process.
Yeah, I love that. So what are you doing in terms of, and what if people are really keen to dive into that and work out what that is, what are the ways, or, do you have a course? Do you, consult? What does that look like?
Yeah, so the base entry level is, I've got a book called Connecting Profit with Purpose.
Yeah, fabulous.
That's it there. If you go to my website, philpreston.com.au, you will find that. And that actually gives you a lot of the background we've just talked about, but also then gives you 5 different ways of going forward and finding your opportunities, including the one we just talked about then. So I love the how-to. I get really annoyed when people go, oh, we've got to change the world, but then, how do we do that? So,
exactly.
And look, anything of value doesn't come easy. So this is, this can be hard. Let's not kid ourselves. This is not about getting a nice glossy photo on the front of our annual report, or something to stick up in the window to say we're, supporting the local sports club. It's a different level again, because what we're doing here is deciding, where do we allocate our time and energy as a business, or the resources of our business, to create returns and win-wins.
Yeah.
So the book is a great entry-level way to start there. And I guess the next level up for me is, and now in the virtual world, it's a lot easier to do. Look, typically a 60 to 90-minute session virtually is an affordable way for people to just crack open this and know where to start aiming. So we just start unpacking what their business looks like, what are their challenges, and I can hopefully help them start drawing some conclusions about where they should be looking, and some ideas around the priorities and what's going to really work for them.
Yeah, I think that's something that that is worth exploring. And again, for small businesses, once you get out of the haze of I just need to make some money to keep the boat afloat, to go, okay, what is my bigger purpose than just building profitability into the business.
Let me give you an example. I think a couple of examples I might mention so far were more around saving money or productivity measures. So you have revenue opportunities here as well as productivity opportunities. And a business I came across recently, and I'll be finding out a bit more about them tomorrow, I think on a call, it's called No Lawyers. And it's a lawyer in Brisbane who's mainly dealing in family law and divorce. And, she found she was turning away 6 out of 10 customers because they wouldn't be able to afford the legal services that come with their situation. Now, that's a problem. The unfortunate statistic is that legal costs in the average divorce in Australia are about $100,000, which is amazing. So she could see, though, that there was a group where it was reasonably amicable and they wouldn't need, a really high-powered process or a team of lawyers behind it. So she invested quite a bit of money in setting up an online system where two partners or former partners can work through this process and actually come out the other end with a legal document that's recognised and enforceable in a court of law. And instead of this process costing them $100,000 in legal fees, it's costing less than $1,000.
Goodness.
So it's an amazing initiative. For her, it's a new product. It's scalable because it's online. I mean, scalable in Australia. It might not be, because of legal jurisdictions, that might not be immediately scalable elsewhere, but that could be another expansion opportunity for her. So yeah, you think about the social benefits of that. You're saving family units potentially up $100,000, which is, ultimately the kids are going to miss out on that as well. So look, I love uncovering those sorts of opportunities. And again, you're not going to work this out just by sitting at home waiting for someone to knock on the door and tell you what that opportunity is. You've got to have your radar out, and that method I mentioned before about constantly tracking your opportunities and challenges versus the social, environmental, and economic things going on around you, and constantly cross-referring them will help you see those opportunities.
Yeah, fabulous. I love it. I love that. I do think it's something that needs to be facilitated by someone else to be able to look from the outside into your business, because we're sort of operating with our little blinkers on, going,
we're all stuck in our own thing. And someone could come in and tell me a lot more about my business probably, or help me reflect much better than I could. What I found is the interesting thing here is, when I've been building this business up over more than a decade, and I thought my primary market would be people who are going, oh, we're not doing any of this, we need to start doing it now. And that's not the case at all. What I found was it turns out to be business owners or executives who kind of sort of have this in the back of their mind. They kind of sort of know it's the way to go, but they haven't quite articulated it in a concise form and don't have a structured process to work through to get there.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it's sort of helping to preaching to the converted. They're already partly converted, and I'm just helping them complete their conversion, I think.
Yeah, complete the conversion. I like. But you're right. I mean, they have it in their minds, and I'd say it's a similar thing. We have it, and I have it in my mind what that sort of looks like, but just being able to drill down and have more of a structure and a clear message around what that is something that I personally, think that we all should have some help in doing.
That's right. And I think another great example, especially for maybe more retail or say manufacturing type businesses, would be, what does the supply of skilled labor look like for your business?
Mm.
Are you struggling to get people with the right skills, or are you sitting there saying, well, in 2 or 3 years' time, I can see I'll need people with new skills. I'm not sure that they exist in my area. So how could you be getting engaged in that process now and I'm sure lots of business owners already do this, but I'm just trying to formalize the concept. How do you get engaged with your local training or education institutions to start addressing those challenges now? And as you said before, that this doesn't have to cost you money. It can just be an investment in your time and different ways of thinking. And so that in 2 or 3 years' time, you're going to be having a much better supply of labor and the things you need.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Phil, love having a chat with you again, and I always come out with all these it's more inspiring ideas of, okay, we need to be able to be thinking about our business in a certain way. Again, it's more a reminder to take the blinkers off and go, what are we doing this for? Go back to our vision, go back to our mission. And if you're not clear and you want to be able to integrate some level of purpose into your business, have a chat to Phil when he's not running around
like a crazy animal,
like a crazy person. 45-kilometer trail run. When's that?
April the 17th. Yes.
After it's just to run off all the Easter eggs.
Yes. So maybe if you want to bounce anything off me, do it before then, because I might not be coherent for a week or two.
That's right. You might not be. At least you won't be walking anywhere after that. Thank you, Phil. It's been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate your time sharing. I love what it is that you're doing. Big advocate. And we'll see you again very, very soon.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You take care. Bye-bye.